Hello and welcome. You are listening to an episode of the Sales Chat Show. To stream or download a host of further free episodes that will power your sales success, please visit saleschatshow.com. We really hope that you enjoy and benefit from this episode. So, hello folks, and welcome to another episode from the Sales Chat Show, saleschatshow.com, driving your sales forward. I'm beyond excited today. We have a full house. We have the Professor, Mr. Graham Jones. We have the telephone assassin, Mr. Anthony Steers, and I'm Simon Hazeldine. I need a tagline as well, don't I? Helping my clients get more sales more often with more margin. Oh, there we go. So, because we've got everybody together, we've had to let Graham trot out some research. So as you know, Graham is a regular reader of the Harvard Business Review and associated sort of journals. No, quite seriously, always on the lookout for fascinating bits of information that can be useful, particularly to the Sales Chat Show listeners. And this episode is entitled Hybrid Selling, When to Go Digital, When to Go Live, and How to Blend Both. So we are in this maybe slightly strange world we've sort of ended up with. Everybody in sales tended to be face-to-face, then we started to make use of the telephone. Then we started to use email, then we had COVID and everything went remote, and now we've sort of come back to some sort of mishmash sometimes, I think, maybe not very well thought through sometimes. How do we phone? Do we get on Zoom? Do we get on Teams? Do we go in person? So we thought we would explore this topic. So Graham, this was inspired by you reading a particular article in the Harvard Business Review. So do you want to kick us off and give us kind of what you discovered from that article?
I love the way you went through the history of how sales was done, and you missed out an entire phase of history.
I was going to say quite badly, I am sure, off the top of my head. But yeah, so my apologies. You're now a historian as well. So what phase of sales history did I mean, I'm sure there are many, but what was it?
Fax machine.
Oh, the fax machine.
You went from telephone to email without the fax machine between it, which, some of our listeners will wonder what on earth a fax machine is, because they will have never used one, but others will go, oh, we did a lot.
Many will have sat beside it praying for the pro forma to come through.
Yeah, quite.
Yes. If you could just sign it and fax it. Hey,
fax it back. Yeah.
I thought I'd arrived when my company installed a fax machine in my house. Yeah. That was absolutely. That was, and it was. It sat in the only place that we could find space for it was in our dining room on our sort of like on a sideboard. And my son Tom, when he was tiny, had one of those little sort of things you sit in as a baby, and it holds you upright, and you can trundle around on your wheels, and he would whiz up and down the floor. He thought it was really funny to pick up the phone on the fax machine and pretend he was speaking to somebody. We went, that's cute. Then he decided to push away in his little buggy thing, and he whizzed off with the phone in his hand, and the fax machine followed him and smashed on the floor. And my IT department at the time were not impressed with my lack of care and attention for my company fax machine. So if you are Gen Z and you're listening to this, have a look. Get on to OpenAI, get on to Google, whatever. Have a look at You don't know what you're missing, folks. You don't know what you're missing.
Give your ears a treat and listen to how a fax machine will sing.
Yes.
I feel like we've gone down a rabbit hole here.
An entirely different conversation here to the one that we thought we were going to have.
Regular sales chat show.
Back to the Harvard Business Review.
No, I was going to say, regular chat show listeners are going, well, this episode's going exactly the same way as all the other sales chat show episodes. True, yeah. So Anthony, yes, let us desperately try and get back to the Harvard Business Review.
Yeah, anyway, I could have faxed you a copy of the Harvard Business Review article, couldn't I, if you hadn't had a son who destroyed your fax machine? But never mind. So this is from the authors of a Harvard book called The Sales Management Handbook, one of the Harvard publications. And they've written an article in the latest Harvard Business Review, really encouraging people to have more face-to-face meetings, because what they're talking about, particularly in the world of B2B sales, we go through that process. We start with people probably visiting the website, maybe looking at a LinkedIn page or whatever. And then there'll be some electronic communication, an email, a form being filled in on a web page or whatever, to which they receive electronic communication. And then it may end up with, perhaps we may have a meeting with them on a Zoom call or a Teams call.
Yep.
And then we will communicate with them via Teams or Slack or something after that, and maybe a few emails. And then maybe one day we might meet the client face to face. And their argument is that actually, if you think about how people build up trust and how they build up a relationship, you do that face to face. So actually, we're putting the face to face meeting at the wrong end of this sales kind of process, that it should be much earlier in the process. And if you think about it, it always used to be much earlier in the process. For many sales, it was the first thing that you would knock on the door and, speak to someone who'd never met you before in their life to try and start to establish that relationship. That's how sales were done. Many salespeople learned their ability to sell by literally door-to-door selling mops and
door knocking,
like that. Household items, and so they had to knock on doors. But even in B2B, you would have a patch, a region, and you would have to visit potential clients and meet them for the first time. So the face-to-face meeting was right at the beginning. We've now, with the hybrid world, we've put it right at the end. And actually, the article is arguing, should we be doing more face-to-face at an earlier stage in order to build that trust and relationship?
And a lot of this was kind of, like you say, a bit more traditional BC, so before COVID, but that then almost forced everybody then not to be able to travel, which perhaps has made us a little bit lazy and deciding that perhaps a Zoom is easier than jumping in the car and spending a few hours traveling.
There's no two ways about it in terms of time usage and in terms of cost. A virtual meeting it ticks all the boxes, right? It 100% ticks all the boxes. So you might look at Salesforce productivity and say, hey, Anthony and Graham can get X number of calls a day in Zoom or telephone, which is why originally telephone-based sales teams were set up inside sales. I mean, and it can work incredibly well and does work incredibly well. Having that, it is excellent from a number of calls or a number of meetings in the shortest. And Anthony, to your point about lazy, it is an easier working environment than having to travel by train or car or plane, etc., to get to the customer. You can sit at home or whatever, or in the office. It's nice and warm and comfortable. And let's not kid ourselves. That is part of the attraction for some salespeople. But I guess, and it'd be really interested what they're saying in the Harvard Business Review. So I guess the argument is that it's easier to build trust face to face.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, when is face to face superior? What is it superior for? Yeah. And how do you put a business case for saying, I'm happier for Anthony, as you know, if Anthony's in my team, to do 2 face-to-face calls a day or something, or 3. I mean, we used to do 8 back in the day, right? But it depends on your industry and depends on what you're doing. Versus, say, 10 Teams calls or 8 Teams calls or Zoom calls or something like that. So when is there anything in there when? So why are they saying they think trust is easier to build?
Because we build trust face to face much more easily. Yeah. So for example, we're recording this on a Zoom, and you're watching me speak. Actually, you've no real evidence it is me, because this could be an AI version of me. Yeah, using various AI things that we could do, and there is now AI that can hold conversations face to face like this on Zoom, but not in the real world. Whereas in the real world, it's me because I'm there physically. So I think increasingly we're going to have problems with trust with online meetings because we won't know if it's the real person or not.
So AI is so good, we're distrusting the digital side now.
Yeah. So I think that that's a problem. But there's also something else that actually being physically present in the same room as somebody else does something different to human communication. It focuses the communication more because at the moment I'm looking in the camera and you two are looking back at me, but I don't know if you are because you might be reading your emails and it might look as though you're looking back at me. You may have disconnected from me. So we know in Zoom calls that communication cannot be as complete as it is face to face. Because if I'm in a face to face meeting with a potential client and they not looking at me because they're doing their emails, we've already, destroyed that relationship. They can't do that in a face-to-face meeting. So face-to-face focuses the communication much more.
And there is a fair bit of evidence around, it's harder for the brain to process a 2D video image than a 3D image, and hence, and there is, and I've certainly seen some evidence about if you have back-to-back virtual meetings, the impact on how the brain can concentrate and focus, etc. And there is, when I did research into negotiation over email and telephone, and at the time, the Zoom capabilities, Skype for Business was in its infancy. So this is, to be fair, kind of old research, but there was more evidence of antagonistic behaviour when people were negotiating via email, etc., and than if it's on the telephone and face to face. So there is that distance aspect psychologically that seems to exist with virtual communication.
The psychological distance, the more we perceive distance between people, the less human we perceive them to be. So dehumanization is a really important thing. We need it. You cannot be a surgeon without dehumanizing the patient because you've got to cut them and make them bleed. And that is not a human thing to do. So you don't, when they're on the operating table, the surgeon has to dehumanize them. They have to think of them as a case, as a something they're dealing with. They become very mechanical about it, and afterwards, of course, they treat them as a human being. But on the operating table, they have to dehumanize. If you're a soldier, you have to dehumanize the enemy because otherwise you can't kill them. So dehumanization is important in various things. So what we do is psychologically put that distance between people. So this is why you see things like, earthquake in Chile, 500 people dead, and you go, oh dear, that's very sad. Earthquake in Birmingham, we're recording this in the UK, earthquake in Birmingham, nobody hurt. You're more worried about the earthquake in Birmingham than you are in the earthquake in Chile. You're more worried about what might have happened to people in Birmingham because they're closer to you. So you see those kind of headlines, earthquake in Chile, one Briton dies. That one Briton becomes much more personal to us because they are more closer to us psychologically than the 499 Chileans.
So perceived proximity, and obviously
proximity,
for our listeners in Chile, exactly the opposite way around, right? Yeah, so, absolutely.
I'd say something I see a lot with customer service departments or even complaints departments where they get the email that is the ultimate rant and nobody wants to phone them. And I always say they're not going to talk to you the way they've typed this.
Quite.
Okay. Yeah. And almost the worse the email is when you phone them, they then realise it's a human on the you've then humanised it, and they tend to tone it down or backtrack or kind of for some it's just venting, and in customer services you learn that people need to vent sometimes. You need to let them get it off their chest. Once it's off their chest, they'll then feel like they're listened to. Absolutely. But
it's much easier for a potential client to say no on a Zoom call than it is face to face, because face to face they realise you're a human selling to them. Online, you're a 2D image.
Yeah, it's just like although they can see you, they
Yeah.
can see you. It's slightly that sort of proximity
Yeah.
distance effect.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when I was when I sort of had a proper job back in the day, and I ended up as
Gotcha.
sort of head of leadership for development stuff for EMEA. We ran a lot of virtual meetings at the time, and we had a zone for the international zone for the first time. So, and my boss asked me to go away and do some research into how to build effective working virtual teams, which is what we had a lot of. And so I went and talked to all the academics at like Ashridge Management College, and
Yeah.
and various places, we INSEAD and various places we used to work with. And the best one was the professor. He said, "Always a good idea to get the team together physically first before you do work with them virtually." And it was almost, I remember bursting out laughing. It was almost like, what's the best way to build a virtual team? I'll get them all together physically first, so they get and then they'll work together. And it's almost like, blimey, right? Is that? I mean, if that's the best the professors can come up with, I thought at the time, who am I to argue, right? Who am I to? So there is that physical
Mhm.
connection, and telephone as well, right? I mean, it's causing us to sort of reminisce here a little bit, isn't it? But it used to
Mhm.
be new on the patch, account manager, phone for an appointment, then go and see them in person the
Then go.
first,
Absolutely. Yep.
and then after that sometimes you could effectively use the telephone and email because Zoom
Mhm.
Teams wasn't invented, but the connection had been established. I mean, you didn't
Yeah.
have to go and see them all the time. We've all taken plenty of orders over the telephone or by email or closed deals in those ways. It can be done. So it's the trust. There's the trust element seems to
And
be the
and,
big
and
thing,
my
does it?
guess is though is that, like say, video conferencing has been around even before COVID and stuff. So we were
Mm,
kind of
mm,
Yeah.
using it. And actually, I used to hear the phrase, "Well, I want to see the whites of their eyes," and people used to say that about video calls. But I think now AI's come in and it's got so clever. Like Graham said, we don't know if that's actually Graham. I don't think AI could do Graham justice personally. So I think we're
no.
probably
Well,
no. But
but I'm sorry, but I recorded. I got AI to record a video for my students,
Mhm.
and they didn't know it was AI. They thought it was
Yeah.
me. I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't give. All I gave it was an outline of what to say. It
Yeah.
turned that into a script. It recorded it with my face and voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I
But I
magic.
do
played it
think
to the
that a
students.
recording of a broadcast of an AI version of you is different from a conversation that
Yeah.
I might have with you.
I've got to
True.
say,
Yeah.
I think that's
At the moment.
probably, and I know it's not like it's a long way off in the future before it becomes very mainstream. I'm not sure that for me, I'm not sure that's the major concern buyers have now. Is, or am I
No.
talking to a real person? I think it's they like to be engaged with someone who cares. I mean, if
Yeah.
Mhm.
if David, in terms of Harvard, Professor David, I think it's Meisner, the guy who wrote
Yeah.
the Trusted Advisor, he has this trust formula that the contributors to trust are reliability, credibility, and intimacy, and the detractor in the formula is perceived self orientation.
Yeah.
And if you think about intimacy in a professional sense, that's that's harder to establish, right? Virtually, but it's still
Yeah.
very important to have those small talk kind of conversations. But I guess it's just easier to
Or
demonstrate reliability, demonstrate credibility, develop the intimacy, manage the self orientation, face to face environment. I guess so.
Yeah.
So,
So
Mhm. Well, just on that particular thing, obviously, I always with what I do and helping people on the phone, I always say it's yeah, rapport. You want them to like you, credibility, so they know they can trust you,
mm,
and then you want them to. Well, the credibility is the bit that then leads them to trust you, so you can ask them to do something as a result of speaking to you. So, from a distance, the way I always get people to establish their credibility, which isn't the same necessarily as earning trust, is by using case studies and references,
mm,
client case. So you can kind
yeah.
of say, look, this is what we've done for other people. Look at what they say about us. Okay, much easier to trust, and people are going to believe what your clients say more than what you
Yeah.
say about you because you have to say you're good, you're paid to. Um, uh, but again, like you say, quite often you've got to earn people's attention, right?
mm,
And that's what I liked with Bryony Thomas's Watertight Marketing. She talked about earning a little bit more time with people, and I think
Yeah.
once you've earned face-to-face time with them, you've established a connection, and
Mm.
it can build from there. Like Graham said, if you leave it till the very end, until they've already become a client, it almost feels like you've done a lot of hard work when a bit of trust at the beginning would have probably speeded up the process.
So
Yeah.
how do we suggest that people approach this, right? So we've got we could phone, we could set up a Teams invitation, or Zoom, Zoom. We could go in person, right? So we've got to have some sort of way of working out when is it optimum to do so. I mean, interestingly, we're headed towards this year's national sales conference coming up in Birmingham. Anthony's spoken at it a few times, so have I. I'm speaking this year, and there was I'm sharing some research around what do the high performers do differently to the average performers, and one of the things is they tend to develop high quality relationships in advance of an opportunity. So they're interfacing, networking, talking to people in. Now, I'm guessing clients, they thought, right, what's my ideal customer profile? What's my ideal target client? We don't yet have an opportunity, but I'm going to start building relationships and speaking to people. And then they wait for the client to either enter the buying phase or they create demand inside the customer. So I'm guessing if you've identified some key prospect accounts or some key ones, getting in there first, and maybe that's a reach out or it's a phone call or something to get an appointment or a Teams, and then get inside their building and start talking to people. That might be one good use. It's early stage prospecting of customers that you've qualified or profiled as being hot properties. You really want these. You really want these kind of customers.
Some sniper style networking, basically. Right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's bringing what the research says is they have higher quality relationships in advance of an opportunity,
Yep.
there being an attached opportunity. So they're, because the client's not yet ready. It's in the research, it refers to like the invisible sale, because then it's yours to lose, right? You're right at the start of the client's buying process. You've built trust and credibility. It's yours to lose, right? That's what they're doing differently. So, and I would challenge that it's possible. How possible is to do that by email, right? Or even
So interesting there. I might be a high performer. I might not have realised this. So from what you were saying there, because what I get people to do on the phone, so obviously this isn't face to face, is I use the analogy of dropping off a pizza menu. So I talked about
Yes.
using those case studies. That's the whole principle, is to say, hey, Graham, this is what we do, but I'm guessing you're probably not looking for this at the moment, right? So you get that out of the way early. This is what I do, but I'm not expecting that you want to buy it right now. Okay. He then confirms that that's the case. And I say, well, look, if you are going to buy it in the future, you might be interested to see what your competitors, your peers, your say about me. So could I just send you this and maybe we'll have a coffee in a few weeks or something like that? Okay, and I think that's a nice way of creating awareness and starting to build your network. And I always say it, and the reason I use that analogy is that we all get pizza menus put through our door, but they don't knock on your door and try and take your order while they're doing it, right? Because that would be rude and really
Yeah.
presumptuous. And right, most people would slam the door in your face. Like it just isn't a polite way of doing it. So it's almost the patience of a salesperson who's networking with the right people. So when the opportunity comes up, they're well placed, hopefully, to help.
But also, I think this is a thing, and yes, without a doubt, you are a high achiever because also what you're doing is you're establishing some value early, and you're
Yeah.
becoming the default to talk to. But sales managers, I think, here is you've got to allow your team. So why have you made this call? Because I'm building a relate that you because this is one of our prospect target. Yeah, where's the opportunity?
Okay.
We haven't got an opportunity yet. We need to keep. So I think sales managers, sales leaders, we need to think about what behaviour are we encouraging, because that research, by the way, is based on like 4.2 million sales opportunities analysis, right? It's a massive piece of data research behind it, right? So they're in early, establishing superior relationships. So we would suggest that would be a good use for.
Yeah.
Use whatever you need to do, but we're suggesting
Yeah.
face to face where possible, right? So that will be
One of the examples in the Harvard Business Review article is a pharmaceutical sales rep who was meeting a client in a coffee shop. And he'd been sitting there with his potential client for a few minutes. Then another rep from a competing company came in, and another rep from another competing company came in, and the sales rep realized that this was the first time they'd met somebody face to face in ages. Realized that the competing companies had, they were regulars at the coffee shop. They had been coming back a lot earlier to meet clients than this
Ah,
pharmaceutical company. And so clearly they had lost out in terms of building relationships where the other companies had,
yeah.
gone back to face, and therefore was establishing those better relationships with people.
So for the right customer with the right potential, that's
Yeah,
that's more strategic selling, isn't
yeah,
it, rather than tactical, rather than maybe than
absolutely. Yeah.
tactical. So that
Work out
it,
the value of that customer, look at lifetime values, those kind
yeah,
of things, and
yeah,
then
And
focus on
there are
them
a
face
lot
to
of
face.
sales teams that are looking for customers, not deals. And I know it sounds stupid, but some people are looking for opportunities, like you were saying. They're on the hunt. Who's going to buy today? Whereas others are more strategic and account managers who are trying to find the right customers who you can
yeah,
nurture into being great customers. So I think that kind of would alter your approach slightly on this, right?
yeah,
True,
yeah,
but the people who are looking for the deal today are in the 20% of the 80-20 rule, aren't they? The 80-20 rule is that those are strategic,
Yeah.
maintain long term customers. Those who are in that 20% are constantly trying to find new customers, which is a
Yeah.
lot more costly than
The
keeping one
other
forever.
the other thing in the research, it showed that lost opportunities will on average have two contacts identified, and one opportunities will have nine.
Yeah,
Nine, two contacts identified for average lost, nine contacts identified for one opportunities. It's much easier to get a referral if you're in the building, right? Because the person
yeah.
might be now. Of course, people are working. I can hear people listening to this. Yeah, but some of
Mm.
those other people are working remotely. Fantastic. Okay, if they're working remotely, no problem. But I could say, Anthony, is there any chance you could just drop John a message while I'm sitting with you and
Yeah.
introduce me to him? You're much more likely to get that if you're sitting at the guy's desk or
Oh,
his
yeah.
or her desk, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. Like I say, Graham, I think people act very differently with a human being in front of
Yeah.
them. I think from a sales perspective, the defense that I often hear is that they keep sending emails and digital messages and it creates a paper trail. So it kind of they can at least say, well, I've nudged them again today, even though the last four didn't work. They still think a fifth email might make a difference. But I think for the manager's perspective, sales leaders and managers here, looking at your pipeline should tell you what's going on. Where the pipeline constipation's happening, either your automation isn't working and a human needs to step in, or the human interaction isn't converting people, in which case they need to up it from a phone call to a Zoom, from a Zoom to a face to face, or
Mm.
whatever it might be,
Yeah.
right? So I'm
I
guessing
think
that's how
the
you
paper trail
identify.
paper
Mhm.
trail argument, is so that they can report to their boss, I made 5 phone calls today, or I
Yeah.
did, left 10 messages yesterday, or I sent 12 emails, or whatever it is that
Mhm.
they've got data they can show. But
Yeah.
that always reminds me of Einstein's point that everything that can be measured isn't necessarily important, and everything that's important can't necessarily be measured.
Yeah,
And so, the thing that's important is establishing the relationships. The thing that's not important is how many emails I sent. And yet,
Yeah.
business, sales managers are demanding reports on how many emails did you send, and you know that is a measure of their productivity. Whereas
mm.
I feel like
actually,
we're
it's the
wandering
relationship that matter.
dangerously close to not giving people targets, but I don't know if I should open that can of worms.
But I
You
think
can see where I was
it
going, couldn't you?
yeah, I think linked to this is I mean we've spoken about leading and lagging indicators before, and it's a really good idea for sales managers, sales leaders to and salespeople, by the way, focus on leading. The number of calls, the number of meetings, the number of opportunities, and how regularly is the opportunity moving, not just the closed. Of course, absolutely, but further evidence that Mr. Anthony Steers is a high performer is your quote, don't just count your calls, make your calls count,
Yeah,
which I
Mhm.
actually think would be a good question for people to say to make this call count. What is the best way for me to have this call with the customer? Is it the phone? Is it Zoom? Is it Teams? Is it in person? Is it arranged to go for lunch? Take the just sort of round the corner for a coffee? Is it invite them to an event? Is it what is it that we? And I just think we just need to be a bit more considered. If you want to make that call or that meeting count, what is the best way to achieve
Yeah.
that?
I teach a module called Digital Leadership, in which I've got a chart which I show people. And this chart is showing all the different methods of communication, whether they are instant, whether there's a lag in them, whether they, we can do them synchronously, asynchronously, all kinds of different things that each channel of communication has. And I show them historically, we only had a couple of channels. We had, face-to-face, print, telephone. Yeah, that was it. Now we then had fax. We then had all these other things, and we've got a huge array of online communications. And I say, so if you wanted to achieve a particular thing, which one of these channels would you use? And so you give them an example, and they look at the grid and go, well, the way to do that would be with a recorded video, for example. Something else would be with a direct message on some social media channel. So how many times then do you sit down and work out which is the correct channel for the kind of communication that I want to have? And people in business don't do that. They instantly go to email, and they think that's communication. It's the wrong kind of communication for so many things. And so we end up in this, let's do digital because digital is easy and we can measure it and all of that, without actually thinking through what's the purpose of the communication. If the purpose is to establish trust, we need to do it face to face.
Because the point here is we're not anti-digital in any way at all.
No.
We're very pro. What the title of the episode is hybrid selling, which means we're going to use a variety of channels that are the most appropriate. If you're doing ABM, account-based marketing, it might be like Anthony saying, you're sharing some case studies. You might send it by email. You're also social selling. You might have that person saved in a lead list on Sales Navigator. And when they're commenting on posts, you're starting to comment and build connections. You might also be phoning that person. You might have a Teams call with them. You also have an in-person, but it's a considered approach, not just a default. Because sometimes, and the other thing I hear people say, oh, the customer doesn't like Teams calls, or the customer doesn't answer the telephone, or the customer doesn't. And sometimes, by the way, they haven't actually tried. they're just hallucinating using some unknown psychic ability. The customer prefers emails, and it's a bit like, how do you know? And I also, with Einstein in mind, I'm not sure this is necessarily Einstein, but it's attributed to him, is if you've sent 4 emails, sending the 5th, I'm not, persistence aside, but insanity is doing the same thing and hoping for a different result. It's a bit like, I know you've got to be a bit more persistent, but
one thing we do know about customers is or potential customers, is they do not like being ignored.
No.
And the one reason why you need that persistence is that the customer wants to be sure that you really want them as a customer. And so giving up after 3 attempts to connect with them is the wrong point to give up. People expect about 7 or 8 attempts before they go, okay, they really want me as a customer.
I remember
so you've got to be persistent.
I was going to say, I remember quoting a statistic that I think I got from you, and then you even corrected my understanding of it, was that 80% of people require at least 5 follow-ups after your initial meeting. And I kind of assumed that was about convenient timing. I needed to try 5 times before I catch Simon on a good day and he answers and I have the call. And you're kind of like, no, actually, when you look closer at it, it's that you've then tried enough times for them to realise that I want the business. It shows that I want the business, but it's a balance of that. I always go polite, persistence, and patience, because you do have to persist, but you do have to be patient. And as long as you are polite, then you can kind of get away with it. I suppose the way I sort of summarise what we were just talking about there is, I think that too often we think about these as just touch points, and actually a touch point is an opportunity to make an impact. It's not just a touch point. And I think that sometimes we're treating them like a touch point rather than an opportunity to connect and have an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's like you were saying, that whole don't count your calls, just make calls that count. We don't care how many times you've dialed or how many people you've emailed. I want to know how many people gave you permission to speak and you had an actual conversation with. Okay, because that's really what I want to measure is the conversations, not the attempts.
It all starts with a conversation is an oft quoted phrase, right? I mean, and there's a little strategy that I was told a number of years ago, where people would download a report or request a report, or they would request a white paper or something like that, and then what the organisation concerned, they get their salespeople to phone up and they'll say, because the person puts in their email and their telephone number when they capture it from the website or whatever. And then they phone them up, and it's quite a clever little approach. Hello, Graham. It's Simon here from E3. I noticed you recently downloaded the report on blah blah blah. And I'm guessing you haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I thought I would give you a quick call and just chat through and it was a nice phrase, because it was a bit like, have you managed to read it? No, I haven't, right? Like, rather like yours,
wrapped in customer service though, right?
Yeah,
that's kind of how it feels. And again, that's a technique I always get everybody to use. I would never phone somebody up and say, have you looked at the email that I've sent you? Because if they haven't and they've been busy, they're going to think I'm being impatient and go, well, look, Anthony, I've got it. If I'm interested, I'll call you. Whereas if you phone and you kind of go, I'm just checking it got through the spam filter. What most people will tend to do is confirm that they've received it and then admit they haven't read it. And that's when you can kind of go, look, I wasn't expecting you to have read it. I just wanted to check it's come through. If you've got any burning questions, happy to answer them. But otherwise, have a little look through that document and maybe we can catch up next week, right? It's just
also, that links very nicely to Graham's show them you care. It's like, I want to make sure you've received it, because often they get eaten by spam filters, and I'm guessing you haven't had a chance to read it. And I just, if you've got any questions now, I might be able to. Shows you care, right? And they might say, no, thanks for. But at least you've put a few pennies in the psychological bank account, right? You've put some positive strokes in the relationship, because they've heard your voice, which is now you're more human than an email.
Yeah.
Well, I would just think, like I say, it then just feels more like customer service than sales. And I think nowadays it's more about helping people to buy rather than convincing them to buy, if you know what I mean. So, or trying to sell to them.
And it's a bit like, hey, this Anthony Steers guy is really helpful now and is bringing me value. What's it going to be like when I actually buy something from him? It's almost that, isn't it? It's you're establishing yourself as... And that's that third stage I was talking about earlier. Once you've established your credibility, you offer a test drive. Put your money where your mouth is. Show them how good you are. Let them experience what you're like to work with, and they don't want to give the keys back.
Yeah,
right. That's the gist of it.
So we're talking about going live and we need to be considered. It's got to be economically viable. The customer's got to hit the ideal profit. If it's low revenue kind of. That's probably not going to be as a great use of half a day of your time. But if like Graham's saying, what's the lifetime? What do you know from your data that if you land key clients that beautifully fit your ideal profile, you can add value, and the lifetime value of that customer is likely to be $10 million or something like that. Half a day for a potential $10 million return in the fullness of time is going to be a bit more work involved. That's a good use. So I think, think about the value back to you from revenue and which ones to use. And I think we're talking about decide on what is an appropriate blend for the number of interactions that you wish to have to establish that trust. So I think it is a blend of them that we should be using, not just our personal favorites or sales managers, sales leaders, the easiest ones to count. Because that's like when Anthony, before we came on the air, you mentioned the paper trail. I burst out laughing. That's what CRM's for. I go in and I go.
There's no paper anywhere.
No, exactly. It's digital. 28th of November, Anthony Steers. Telephone Simon Hazeldine. I got his voicemail. I left a message. And then what what else? What else do you need? I mean, it's just it's like I,
Hmm.
and
Yep. You lost the
use.
words, aren't you?
I just use your CRM intelligently. It's like I know, it is back to, if you want your customers to trust your salespeople, you might need to trust your salespeople as a sales manager.
Yeah.
Just the thought, right? Allow your salespeople to use their intelligence and their experience, and if they say, I need to jump on the train, I need to get on the plane, coach them through their rationale, coach them through the decision process. But we know from that research that the elite are getting in early and building higher quality relationships in
Yep.
advance of opportunities.
Yeah.
And they have the economic buyer engaged 400 and something like nearly 500% more likely than the average. They have a higher number of contacts, and that takes connection, relationship building, and interaction.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
any other and any other coffee shop hints from the Harvard Business Review?
No, there are no other coffee shop hints. But in terms, if you think about what you were saying about that lifetime value and, focusing on those clients, it's the 80-20 rule again, isn't it? That 20% of your clients are going to be those long-term value people who you should be focusing on. So if you're a sales manager and thinking you've got to, dramatically increase your budget for travel costs, you haven't. You've only got to increase the budget for that 20%, because the others, you don't have to do this early face-to-face as much, because the value to your business is going to be less. You can do face-to-face, but maybe that's okay later down the chain, as it were. But for those 20% who are going to be those long-term customers, you really need to invest in face-to-face early on in this hybrid journey.
Because it is about, I think it is about taking that more, we've used this phrase quite a lot on the Sales Chat Show, is that stepping back and using that more strategic approach, and calling intelligently, and again, to mention, it is beautifully encapsulated in, don't just count your calls, make your calls count, right? And not just as a a little soundbite, Anthony, right? It means it's considered calling, it's considered connection, it's considered meetings.
And replace the word call with conversation, right? You're having a conversation with people. That's what you really want. You want them to engage with you. And the quickest way to find it out is to hear it from the horse's mouth, right? So, interesting. I think we'll see more people taking that approach of trying to put the face-to-face in early. There are still companies out there that still traditionally do that. They have their telemarketers doing the legwork. They find the opportunities to set the meetings. They send the guys out and go and so on from there. But yeah, it's been an interesting one. And Graham, I think it's kind of fascinating with how the trust factor is really that's the crux in it all. And I think AI is actually making us more skeptical, and ironically is going to push us back together as human beings. So hopefully this is a trend that everybody will be noticing and jumping onto.
And as folks, as regular listeners to the Sales Chat Show will know, we're not AI adverse. We are absolutely encourage salespeople to fully embrace the power of AI and leverage it in their business, right? But it's not going to be the answer necessarily at the moment. to
minimum effort, maximum reward has always been the mantra of most salespeople. So we want stuff to work. I think we all just need that matrix that Graham was talking about earlier on, where you kind of say, well, what is it you're trying to do? Here are all the methods of which you could use. Now think about what's going to have the impact to move somebody to the next stage of their thinking or through your pipeline. So got my brain going for sure.
Yeah, and mine as well. And just to sort of try and do a bit of one-upmanship on Mr. Jones, who loves trotting out all that research. You notice I've managed to bring a lot of research into this episode. And I'm going to conclude. Anthony, you mentioned the importance of conversation. Forrester Research, 88% of senior executives said they preferred a conversation to a presentation for sales-related matters. And if you can get in person with a C-level executive, that's going to be a really good conversation, right? That's going to be a far better, not an easy people difficult to get in the diary of, but if you get in there 15, 20 minutes, I know it doesn't sound like a long time. You spend the whole day for 20 minutes in front of could be the best 20 minutes you've invested in the last year.
Yeah. Well, my guess is your best presentation was done after a very good conversation, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's another way.
So
It's another way of yeah. So it's
yeah,
kind of like that sounds fascinating. Now tell me a little bit more. Now we're
yeah.
talking. Now we're talking.
88%. Oh, I'm loving that, people. I hope you're all listening.
So leave the slides at home, right? Because think about, if you go back to David Meisner's trust formula, the self-orientation reduces levels of trust. It's a bit like, I'm itching to get my slides out. Here we go. Let me start talking about us. Oh, funny you say that, Mr. Customer. Let me show you the map of the world, showing all of our office locations. It's a little bit like, nah, that comes further down, right? You're showing your orientation to the customer, not to yourself. So, well, fascinating. What a fantastic conversation. Hopefully that's been useful to you and you pull together. I think Anthony's suggestion is great. What are the kind of the interactions? What methodologies? What different ways have you got? And choose with care and consideration those different ways. Adopt that hybrid approach, and we're leveraging all the very best tech, all the very best of digital, all the very best of telephone based, all the very best of in person. So thank you very much, gentlemen. There are about now, 300 something plus, we must count them at some stage, episodes in the Sales Chat Show back catalogue, available from all the major podcast platforms, thanks to the fine efforts of Mr. Graham Jones, who takes care of all of our tech wizardry and stuff. So whether you're Spotify or whatever you like, we'll be there. Please make sure you subscribe so you get the notifications of new episodes. They come out on a regular basis. In the meantime, we would like to wish you good luck and good hybrid selling, folks. And we'll see you on another episode really soon. You have been listening to an episode of the Sales Chat Show. To stream or download a host of further free episodes that will power your sales success, please visit saleschatshow.com. Thank you very much for listening to this episode, and from everyone here at the Sales Chat Show, we'd like to wish you good luck and good selling.